Okay, so the meeting is now being recorded. I'll start over. I'm speaking today about the biofield, the human energy field, and my first slide here is to define an energy field, and I show you as an example the field lines made by a bar magnet placed under a piece of paper with little sprinkles of iron. Of course, iron is attracted by magnets, and so the iron shavings now reorganize in a way to show you the field lines of attraction between the north and the south poles of a magnet. So that's an example of an energy field. And there are other energy fields. And one that spans the spectrum of radiant energies, energies that move at the speed of light throughout the universe, include visible light, for example, from stars, or the light from the moon or sun. And this is a large spectrum of energy from very long wavelengths out in the radio wave region, and then the microwave region, which is where cell phones communicate, the infrared region where our bodies actually make a lot of infrared light and can be seen on infrared cameras. In fact, that's used in thermography to image and look for inflammation in the body. And then the visible spectrum, which is a very, very narrow part of this enormous spectrum. And you can see in the lower part of it, I'm not sure you can see my mouse move, can you? If I wiggle
Yes.
my mouse? Okay, so I'm showing you with my mouse this area here, the very small region of visible light which our eyes are sensitive to, but we can't see any of these others.
Hello.
Hello?
Hi, this is Jordan Flesher. I just wanted to confirm that I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Jordan. We'll do check-in with you later because I'm in the middle of a lecture. Thank you.
Sorry.
So now, going to the right, the faster moving, faster vibrating waves with shorter wavelengths, ultraviolet. Again, we can't see it, but it has medical benefit. And if somebody can mute themselves where there's noise in the background, that would be helpful for the recording. Thank you. Of course, X-rays are higher frequencies that pass through our tissues except for bones, and then we do imaging, and then out to gamma rays, which are traveling through the universe. So that sound is distracting, so if you could kindly mute, I'd appreciate it. You won't do any talking for the next 30 minutes, so it'd be helpful if you all muted, and therefore if you don't know if you're the sound culprit, we've got you covered. So, okay. We really need muted. Thank you so much. So, energy fields are within our bodies and around our organism. And they're made by our organism. They're made by the tissues. Some of them may be even more fundamental to life. This is getting difficult to talk. Maybe we can take care of the muting first. There's a lot of noise going on. Do you know how to do the mute? You just turn off your audio, or on your telephone you hit the mute button. That would be very helpful, because I am recording this, and for those who aren't here, they're going to have to suffer through this recording. Okay, so electromagnetic fields are part of the biofield, and I do believe there would be subtle fields not yet known to science that are also part of the biofield. So the biofield, as I define it, is a vital field that is an active organizer of the organism. I do believe it's involved in bringing coherence to the activities of life. You know, the Human Genome Project elucidated all of the genes of the human body, and we had the very unappealing result that we have less genes than a grain of rice. I don't see that DNA is the active organizer of us, even though it holds the library of our genes. So there's got to be something at a coherent level that's holding life together. And of course, when you die, you grow cold, you don't move. It's clearly an energetic principle that is vitality. So I propose that the vital field or the biofield is the active organizer of life, and it's an energy field. And it's within us as well as around us. So living organisms emit and absorb energy. We are antennas that sense one another and other energy fields of dogs and other beings. And we radiate energy, and we can be sensed by others. Okay, I really have to ask your help in muting.
I I think it might be me. It's Jordan again.
Do you know how to mute
I don't.
yourself?
There's no mute option on my phone here for this
Okay.
call. I tried
Are
turning
you
off the
caller number
audio.
4? Let me see. You just called in, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to mute you. How's that?
Okay.
Okay. Now, let's see. Maybe I'll just mute every caller because I don't know if they know how to mute themselves. I'm going to mute all the callers. And everybody else on a computer can mute their audio. Okay, hopefully that took care of the problem. So, my definition of the biofield is the vital field that is the active organizer of an organism. And every living organism would have a biofield. And so that field is within us as well as around the body, but radiates out into space. And we literally emit energy. I mean, if we could find that energy, it would be in outer space too. The energy coming from our body is very, very low level, but it doesn't have any boundary. It's not like the skin, and it's not bounded by the skin. So it goes out from beyond the body. That's an important thing because some energy healing is done through distant healing, not local, not laying on of hands and not hands in the biofield, the local biofield. So organisms emit and absorb energies, and we are antennas both sensing and radiating them. And that's an important thing because we can be changed by the very fields that are imposing on us. For example, there is the phenomena of entrainment. And when a patient goes to a practitioner, presumably the practitioner is healthier, the patient can entrain to the energy fields of the practitioner. That's a form of the practitioner therapeutic partnership. It's entering into what's happening in the therapeutic setting. And yet it's often not spoken of in mind-body medicine, but it's part of it. So there's quite an overlap between mind-body medicine and energy medicine, but there are modalities of energy medicine that are different from mind-body medicine because in many cases we are applying energy directly to the body with the purpose of making a therapeutic shift. And that's somewhat different from the various modalities of using your mind to do visualization and all the things we do in mind-body medicine. So we have a lot of concepts from indigenous health systems from around the world. I already mentioned these, but Qi, sometimes spelled QI, from Chinese medicine, prana from ancient India, from Ayurvedic medicine, Ki from Japan, really means the same thing as Qi. So from the various Oriental medicines, these were terms still used today in those fields of medicine. And if we look back culturally, every indigenous culture had a unique term for the life force. All of our Native Americans, for example, had a term for it. I've spoken to some of the tribes. It's been a deep part of human culture. And in the various systems of medicine, homeopathic medicine, chiropractic care, osteopathy, the biofield therapies such as Reiki and therapeutic touch, and other complementary and alternative modalities, the concept of a vital force or life energy has been present, and they're not giving it up anytime soon. They need it to explain how their modalities work. So the biofield now is a term we brought in that's generic, that can apply to all of these types of medicine as something involved that is responding to an energy stimulus. Because we have to ask ourselves, how could this bag of biomolecules respond to energy medicine? There's got to be some central organizing process by which it does. And the biomolecular changes that result are actually downstream from the biofield interaction with an energy therapy. So this is art from the East, and you can see a depiction of the biofield and the chakras, some of the so-called energy anatomy of the human body. And what's interesting about this art, this particular piece, is that the biofield and the surrounding cosmic energy seem to blend. And that's also a principle of Oriental medicine, that they do believe the chi or the prana is a universal life force, that it's found out there in the cosmos, as well as concentrated within us, living beings. Qigong is, of course, the word means the mastery of the energy, and this is part of Chinese medicine. And they are mind-body exercises, but they involve imagining or intending to move energy around the body. And there are many thousands of types of Qigong, some of which are practices designed to make you healthier, others of which are practices that are more useful for the martial arts and for stunts, doing stunts. I've seen a Qigong master crack a slab of iron on his crown chakra, and it was amazing. There wasn't even a mark on his shaved head. And he said, well, I didn't feel anything. I broke it with my chi field. And so these masters, I mean, the Easterners have cultivated the mind-body relationship to the extent that they have mastered the movement of chi, both within their bodies and even coming out of their bodies to influence others or matter at a distance. That's the power of practicing some of these Eastern modalities. And we'll talk more about Qigong later on in the course. So there's been a history of field concepts in biology and medicine. So we've talked a little bit about the ancient systems from ancient Orient and India, China, Japan. In science, we had a concept known as vitalism. It actually was a philosophy that there's something special about living things that they can't be explained in terms of physics, chemistry, and young science that was growing at the time, that life had a soul. But that came to an abrupt end in 1845 when a chemist synthesized the first biochemical in the laboratory. And then science, the growing science at that time said, well, I guess there's nothing special about life. So vitalism died. But nonetheless, there was always a way that the concept of a biofield was kept alive. And in looking at embryology, morphogenesis, the early embryologists in the late 19th and early 20th century talked about a field that would shape life called morphogenetic field. Because if you watch the organism, the fetus unfolding, it's really amazing. And it seems to be guided by a field, not too different from that magnet that I showed you earlier with a head and a tail. There was a famous theory at Yale University, and it came up around the same time that DNA was discovered. It was called the electrodynamic theory of life by two distinguished Yale University scientists, Burr and Northrop. But because DNA was discovered around 1950 and became such a dominant thing to study in biology, electrodynamic theory of life was lost largely. And it wasn't until about 1980 when modern biological field concepts got going again. So energy medicine involves applying energy to the body, but I have to say that that energy that's applied contains information. I know caller 5 has arrived. I'm going to mute you until the end. Thank you. So the biofield therapies are the various forms of laying on of hands or action at a distance, prayer type healing, and some examples are therapeutic touch, Reiki, giving external chi from Qigong masters, healing touch, quantum touch. There are many forms of these today. That's one good thing, that there are many different developments. On the other hand, the field is quite split because of these different therapeutic ways of using the hands and universal chi and one's own body. But it's still, I would say, growing, and we're learning a lot from this diversity of biofield therapies, which we'll be going into more detail later on in the course. And then there are fields that can be applied through devices, electric and magnetic devices, and we'll be spending 1 week on devices per se. Some of them are black boxes. We don't know how they work. Others are very clear how they work, and more of them are becoming more mainstream and FDA approved, but there are a number that probably will never become FDA approved because of the expense of that. So this is my hypothesis about the biofield. I published it back in 2002, called it the biofield hypothesis, and these are the various points of it. So it's a native field or endogenous field of the organism that every living thing would have one. It consists of electromagnetic and possibly other more subtle fields that go beyond conventional science even. I would also add there's acoustic fields. There's the heartbeat, and certainly the fetus is exposed to the sound of the mother's heartbeat. That's an important field governing human development. And we also emit extremely low-level light from the body, infrared, and many other frequencies. So, and there may be other subtle energy fields. Now, my laboratory is actually working on trying to measure more subtle energy fields from the human. And we've succeeded, I believe, in measuring something. And in a subsequent lecture, I'll tell you more about that. That's rather exciting. But I haven't published a paper on that. I have one that I'm writing right now. Second point here, the biofield conveys vital information and is central to the integration of the organism. So something has to hold it all together. It isn't the brain or the heart or any particular organ. It's the field, and it's communicating information through an energy field such that every cell in your body is a recipient of it as well as a generator of that. It's more like a symphony of all these cells and organs and tissues playing a symphony of many, many frequencies, and that is dynamically changing over time, like a musical symphony. I propose that the biofield regulates the biochemistry and physiology of the body, which means that it is a grand regulator. People have talked about, well, what is that? Is it the DNA? Is it a particular master gene or whatever? I think probably it is consciousness, but the biofield then is the next energetic or material thing that is interacting with consciousness that shifts, and then the body changes. So according to Chinese medicine, where mind goes, qi flows, and blood follows qi. That's the bottom line principle of Oriental medicine. So the mind, the intention, the emotions, the will is driving the energy field, the biofield. And the energy field is then driving the chemistry, the physiology of the body. So it's kind of a bridge between mind and body. And the biofield, now that Wi-Fi and wireless is so well understood because we all have devices, the biofield was nature's original wireless. It's a wireless biocommunication system within us, communicating between all the cells in the body and between us, communicating between us because we do sense the energy of others. So, energy medicine involves energy fields with information. The energy holds the information. The information is critical because the body somehow decodes these frequencies as informational. And that's what we do when we give therapeutic energies, whether that's a laying on of hands type, biofield therapy, or from a device. I think I had that slide before, sorry. Whoops, am I going backwards here or forwards? Let me move on. So there are some evidence supporting the biofield hypothesis. There are many, many ways to stimulate the body energetically. For example, the acupuncture points, which seem to be portals into the biofield, can be needled with little stainless steel needles. With electricity, they can be stimulated with a needle to which electricity is added. With magnets, with light directly without needles, with ultrasound, with pressure, which would be acupressure, and we might add moxibustion with heat. All of these ways of stimulating the energy field, the energy system of the body has effects. And there are so many medical practices in which extremely small energy stimuli are applied to the body and have therapeutic effects. There probably are many, many more energy medicines than there are mind-body medicines. Energy medicine is vast, and nobody knows it all. As you'll see as you get involved in the textbooks, it's vast. There are so many ways of applying different types of energies to the body. I just spoke about the ways to influence the acupuncture points, and there's at least 10. So the biofield can be seen, if you want to visualize it, as a complex dynamic standing wave. Here, for example, is a view of standing waves and resonance from, on the left, from musical instrument theory, from, say, a tone in a clarinet that's making a note. It's a resonant frequency, and there are waves inside that vibrating. When a string is plucked, of course, the two ends of the string are fixed. The center of the string can vibrate and chooses to vibrate in patterns where there's patterns like this. Antinodes, nodes, antinodes, nodes. And so there are only so many frequencies that will fit on any given string length and overtones common to it. And that's a standing wave pattern. And the instrument then resonates with that vibrating string. The resonant body of the wooden violin helps the string make more noise because it has resonant properties. Now the earth has resonant frequencies, not sound, but electromagnetic. It turns out that any time on Earth there are many lightning storms, probably several hundred lightning storms, that are creating waves, standing waves, that bounce between the Earth's surface and the uppermost atmosphere, which is known as the ionosphere. The boundary of the ionosphere is sort of the edge of the atmosphere of the Earth. And these standing waves bounce then between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere and form a standing wave pattern. And it has a particular ground state frequency of 7.8 hertz. 7.8 waves per second is the Earth's natural mode. Now, it's no coincidence that the resting frequency when you close your eyes and meditate is about 8 hertz. That's called the alpha rhythm in the electroencephalogram, or the EEG. I don't think that's a coincidence. In other words, we are vibrating with Mother Earth's ground frequency. And we are always being influenced by energy fields around us, from other people, from instrumentation, and now we have to worry about the ambient communication devices and all of the fields coming from cell phones and cell phone towers and wireless this and that in our environment. So another way to visualize standing waves are standing waves in water. If I had a little stick and I vibrated it up and down in a pool of water, I might get a pattern like this, as the waves also spread out and then reflect from the edges of a pool. So think about the biofield like standing waves, but not necessarily acoustical, more electromagnetic. But it's a good visual metaphor, I think, to help you imagine what this energy field is like. And it's always changing. It's forever dynamic. It's not static. And that's very different from a simple musical instrument where you pluck a string and you get just maybe one sound and a few overtones. The biofield is always changing and being responsive to the fields around us. So one main prediction from the biofield hypothesis is that shifts in the biofield would then precede a cascade of events in the physiology and the biochemistry. So by energy medicine, we need to make a shift in a person's biofield. And when we do that successfully, we change the physiology and the biochemistry, and thereby healing can ensue. So is there a conductor for the symphony of the biofield? It's the mind. There's the link to mind-body medicine. It's our intention, it's our awareness, our will, and emotions. All the elements of mind shift or can shift the biofield. So we can do it intentionally with guided visualization or mindfulness, greater awareness, or changing our emotions to more positive affect. We shift the biofield and the flesh and blood follow. And so it's a bridge between mind and body. I said this earlier, the chief principle of Oriental medicine is very important, and it sort of underlies and connects mind-body medicine to energy medicine. Where mind goes, chi, the energy flows, and blood, the flesh, follows the chi. So the mind is the quickest thing to make a shift. You just do it in no time at all. You shift your intention. The energy, which takes a little longer to get going, then flows. And the flesh and blood, the densest level of our being, takes the most time to make a shift. So this is a pattern of the acupuncture meridians shown front and back. This is part of the Biofield anatomy from Oriental medicine that was known for thousands of years. How did they figure this out? I think they were such advanced masters of mind, body, and then energy that they could see these portals and feel the energy flow. And I've practiced Qigong now for some years, and I still consider myself a beginner, but I do have some feeling of the flows, and especially the more superficial meridians like gallbladder along the side. So can we measure the biofield? This is something that I've been involved in deeply, because if we can measure it, then we can show that it exists. That's important scientifically. And it would be very useful to see changes in the biofield when we do apply an intervention to a client or customer. Because if we do see an improvement in the biofield, then we can expect that healing will ensue, especially if the biofield has been improved, has been made more regular, and irregularities have been removed. So there are some techniques to assess the biofield, and some of them, such as skin electrical conductivity, have been elevated to glorious biofeedback devices. This is sometimes called meridian biofeedback, where you take a look at the electrical conductivity of each acupuncture meridian and how it changes then after you do an intervention with someone. I'm going to talk today about digital electrophotography, and there are other things that my laboratory has done that we don't have time to discuss today. But let me tell you about one such device, and it is called BioWell. It's a type of camera that permits you to image each fingertip by charging the fingers. As you place your finger in this black hooded area, each finger then is touching a charged plate and emits energy in the form of light, and that light is seen by the camera. Is the digital camera. It's a CCD, much as you have in other digital cameras, charge coupled detector, and that is then sent to a computer and for taking a look and analyzing the data. This came from Russia and had its precursor in the technology of Kirlian photography, invented way back in 1948 and first found out by the West in the 1970s, because we didn't know much about what was going on in Russia during the Cold War. But this is a digital form of it, and it's a commercial device. You can buy one and use it. So electrophotography this is a side view of what's going on inside that white box camera, where you put each finger one at a time in. The finger touches a charged plate. The plate is charged with about 5,000 volts, but you don't feel a shock. It's a very high impedance. What happens is that light is emitted around the fingertip, and that's called gas discharge visualization. It's known as a corona discharge in physics, and it's a well-known phenomena. Any object placed on a charged plate will emit light, but a living thing placed on a charged plate emits a dancing biofield. It's very different than the image you get from a metal coin or a metal rod, which actually is used to calibrate the device. There's a pattern and a vitality to the pattern emitted from a fingertip. And each fingertip is then computer colorized, and these are the 10 images resulting from the left thumb, the right thumb, 1L, 1R, the index finger, etc., down to the pinky. And ideally, if one is well regulated energetically, the images of light surrounding each fingertip are perfect circles with a little bit of sparkiness at the edge. And as you can see here, there's some variation. Especially the little finger didn't do very well on this person. But I've looked at a lot of people who are extremely well regulated because they practice yoga, qigong, meditation for many years. And I've seen what well regulated people look like energetically, and they look like perfect circles of light, also rather robust. And I think about it like this: you turn the flame on the stove. Um, if it's a strong blue flame, it's not likely to go out. It's not going to flicker. But if you have a weak flame with missing parts, the flame may go out altogether. This is likened to the life force of the biofield. If the biofield is strong, the chi is flowing uniformly all around the edges of that finger. And if it's not, then there are some issues. And the software goes on to analyze. And now here's where the Russians have done a lot of empirical work studying hundreds of thousands of people over decades. They have taken each fingertip image from these instruments and have looked at sectors of it corresponding to what they have found are particular organ systems. How did they do this? By looking at sick people, someone with a low thyroid or with the gallbladder removed, for example. What does that look like in the fingertip energy? And they could map the different sectors of emission from the fingertip with various organ systems and even compile this composite calculated biofield based on the fingertip images. And that's what the device does. So I'll give you an example. Here's a female 26-year-old in chronic pain and depression. I'm just going to show you, first of all, fingertips. Her baseline, this is the right middle finger, which, by the way, relates to the head, the third finger, the middle finger. So, of course, she's depressed, and the baseline does not look very uniform. Chi is not flowing so well. And you can see the various sectors here and what they relate to. I also gave her a placebo because there's always an effect of the biology of belief. And you can see that the placebo definitely improved her. I didn't tell her it was just a sugar pill. And then we waited some time. And then we did the real thing. Acupressure on key points, especially for her condition. And we got a very strong energy field. Again, it's more like a perfect circle of light, and it definitely filled in the missing gaps as seen initially. And it did better than placebo. So the real therapeutic response would be this minus this, or this minus this, depending on whether you relate it to the placebo. And taking a look at the composite biofield from BioWell, this was her initially with some holes and issues. This is her after the placebo, the center one. And on the far right is the post-acupressure BioWell composite biofield. And you can see that she's doing much better. Now, if she holds this pattern, the flesh and blood will follow. That's the theory of shifting the energy. But of course, people fall back, and that's why they need to come again and again to you as a practitioner. And generally, after the 12th treatment of acupressure or acupuncture, the back pain subsides. The depression may be improved. So often there is not a recovery the first time. One has to be patient. Sometimes there is, and again, everyone's different, but these energy shifts are valuable to show people because sometimes they won't feel anything, and yet you want to show them they're on track toward recovery, toward their own self-healing. So something else the software does is take a look at stress levels. So some of the variables that come out of the analysis. And these are normalized values in the software, so I can't tell you exactly what they mean. But this person came in, was rather anxious. The orange bar was their initial state. The purple bar, which is somewhat lower, is post-placebo. And post-actual therapeutic intervention of acupressure reduced it and made it just barely in the normal zone. So that shows an interesting progression. And the energy status of the person, this is looking at the amount of chi or the strength of the biofield. It started out on the low side of normal. The placebo made it a bit stronger, and the actual active intervention made it even stronger. The right-left balance is another aspect of looking at energy. People should be right-left balance. That's ideal. Again, the smooth, unimpeded flow of qi is the ideal in regulation of energy. So this person started out about 91.5% left-right balance. The placebo definitely boosted her left-right balance to 98.4, and the active intervention a shade more, 98.98. And looking at the distribution of energy throughout the organs, that's another aspect of the software which is rather detailed that I won't go into right now, but you can see the progression again, going from the baseline of 80.4 up slightly with the placebo and then up to 86 with the active intervention. So that's the kind of thing that you can see with a device that can assess the biofield and take a look at how a mind-body or energetic intervention is shifting the energy and improving energy regulation. So we're going to be talking in this course about biofield therapies, many of which are hands-on type therapies. And there's interesting literature on this that goes back to 19th century theosophy. This is actually a figure from a very old book about the chief energy centers of the human hand. And right in the center of the palm, this is a very special point in Chinese medicine. It's called Lao Gung, the palace of work. In theosophy, it was also known to be a minor chakra, as was the wrist. And there were whorls of energy coming out of the fingertips. And all of this has been borne out in modern science. This was done intuitively by people who sensed energy, who could see energy or feel it, perceive it through a sixth sense. And I can tell you in my own research that we measure more light coming out of the palms of the hands and the fingertips, very much like this. So fascinating that the intuitive knowledge then corresponds to what we actually measure in science. Now moving along, our energy fields are not so individualized, but they're entangled. You may have heard the term quantum entanglement. It's kind of a buzzword among people who talk about non-local mind, and people like Dean Radin actively studying the influence of the mind and parapsychology. So when we come together in groups, we're entangled energetically. We become interrelated. We stimulate one another, and that's the virtue of having a group meeting, which we will never feel, I'm sorry to say, in a virtual meeting like this. And it's a sad loss for this class because we can't have that experience of a group biofield. But you can do that on your own in your own groups, hopefully. And we're talking about then biofields of persons coming together, the therapeutic partnership, the power of the group or the clan, the influence of other organisms, that healing dog. And I find healing from plants, from having a garden, going out barefoot on the earth and feeling, getting grounded from the earth and our relationship to Mother Earth through the Earth's native frequency, what's called Schumann resonance, that's 7.8 hertz, and its overtones. And the magnetic field of the Earth. This is a photograph from NASA, looking at how the magnetic field of the Earth is changing. So the field is getting weaker, and the North Pole is migrating around, and parts of it are below now near the South Pole. This is a dynamic magnet. The Earth might be considered alive just as we are in terms of its shifting energy field, although its lifetime is much longer than ours. It's been around 5 billion years. But right now it's losing its magnetic field, and so that's something to be concerned about because life is used to that magnetic field. And every time there's a magnetic pole shift on Earth, there's a loss of a lot of species. We can see that in the fossil record. So life somehow depends upon the Earth's frequencies, the Earth's energy too, not just materially, but the signals from the Earth give us information that keep us healthy. And when the astronauts went in space, they were removed from the Earth's field, and they had to set up artificial magnetic fields to keep them healthy at the space shuttle, space laboratory. So this is from Oshman's book, and it shows the correspondence, the enormous correspondence between Earth's 7.8 hertz and brain alpha rhythm. You basically can't see the difference. It shows you how much we are in training to Mother Earth in our most restful waking frequency. When we sit still, close our eyes, and just let thoughts suspend thoughts, suspend active thinking, but just let thoughts like clouds come through your mind, a kind of transcendental type meditation instruction. So energy is conveying information important to life, and that is coming from other beings around us, animals, plants, and Earth, and possibly beyond to outer space. I would add the sun, and I think there's more from the sun than just light and warmth. So there are extremely low-level signals all around us from the ambient environment and organisms that can affect us. They can produce biological effects that may be beneficial, neutral, or negative for our health. And one example of a negative one is this. Use of the cell phone touching the body. If you were ever to read the instructions that never came with your cell phone but are deeply hidden in the settings tab, you would read that you should never touch your cell phone to your body. You should keep it at least an inch away. But of course, most people do this. And what's sad to see is young children doing this. Now that we have 7 billion cell phones on an earth of 8 billion people, we have to be concerned about this because these children are getting radiation into their brains during development, and it's not a healthy thing, and has been linked to cancer and many things. Just to tell you briefly about a study that I did on cell phone radiation, because I consider that part of anything influencing our energy field is important, but this is healthy blood, and it's how blood cells look under dark field microscope. You just see the edges of the red blood cells, and the plasma is clean, and the cells are separated and nice looking. This is what your blood looks like, that same person who held the cell phone for 45 minutes. And the blood cells have now gotten sticky and are sticking together, and so microcirculation would not be very good in this case. So let me summarize. This is my last slide. So we talked about life as a dynamic open system of energy flows, with the biofield as an active organizing principle. And that is the centerpiece for understanding how energy medicine works, because any energy then is going to make a subtle shift in the biofield, which will then go on to make a change in the flesh and blood over time. If the biofield change is sustained, then the flesh and blood will follow. And that's the principle of Oriental medicine. That energy is the bridge between mind and body. So when we shift our minds, the energy shifts, and then the flesh and blood follow. And that consciousness itself can interact with the energy fields of life, again, through intention, through will, through shifting our emotions. We shift our energy. The various biofield therapies which involve laying out of hands or sending energy over a distance even, are also known as healer interventions, sometimes called energy healing, also called biofield therapy, just so you understand that those are meaning the same thing. And there are probably thousands of types of energy therapies and new ones being invented all the time that can impact the biofield. So energy medicine is much vaster than mind-body medicine. And that electromagnetic fields, or EMFs as they're sometimes called, which are ambient in our environment today due to wireless devices of communication, which are virtually everywhere, from cell phone towers to your computer to your Wi-Fi modem to your cell phone and your tablets. I'm especially concerned about the wireless microwaves floating around, because there's quite a lot of evidence that they can impact our health for the worst, and yet they're moving up to a new generation 5G, which is to be rolled out later this year. So that's the end of my little introduction to the human energy field, and now I'm happy to entertain discussion, and I'm going to unmute everybody that was muted earlier, and you can unmute. Hello? So now we'll take discussion on this or anything you'd like to discuss.
Hi, Beverly. Richard Hutchinson here. There's been a movement here in Cincinnati regarding EMF devices, especially the newer smart utility meters that many of the communities now are having their city council band together to push demand that the utility companies remove devices from individual homes. I just wonder what any of your thoughts are on that.
Well, I have a lot to say about that because I think the first rollout was in California of these smart meters. You're talking about smart meters, right?
Uh-huh.
Yes, and it was about 5 years ago when they rolled them out here, and I read the insert on my power bill and said, I don't want this, and they called in and I opted out. So I didn't get a smart meter, and later people who got smart meters, suddenly I had a slew of clients, people who had, would you folks mute your thing if you're in a noisy place? It's really hard to hear. Thank you. So I had a lot of clients who had trouble because they had symptoms of what we now call electrohypersensitivity, headaches, fatigue, malaise, trouble concentrating, difficulty sleeping, and sometimes pain as a result of having a smart meter nearby their office, their bedroom, or their bed. And sometimes it wasn't even their own smart meter. It was the smart meter of an apartment complex or a workplace. So in this state, one can opt out. And I think so. It's so in Arizona. And I know that the rollout is going around the country, but if you have problems with those or you wish, I suggest you start a movement in your state, an opt-out program, so you can go back to your old manual meter where the man has to come and read it once a month. But it's a lot safer, and it's not blasting you with digital, very sharp spikes of radio waves all the time. I measure these smart meters. They have very, very sharp spikes, and it's extremely jarring to the biofield. There's nothing in nature that is digital. We are analog beings, and these devices are digitally pulsed at such a high rate that it's extremely jarring. And that's why I think that we had such a number of people who became electrohypersensitive. And electrohypersensitivity is on the rise as we have more and more devices in our work life, in our lives in general. And a lot of people mindlessly carry their cell phones, in their pockets, near their genitals or their heart or their bra. This is not a sensible thing. And if you take a look online, there's a lot of information that it's a weak carcinogen. There have been more brain tumors. The World Health Organization has categorized wireless radiation as a weak carcinogen. It's out there, but again, everyone is infatuated with wireless, especially where I live, close to Silicon Valley, where they make these things. So what we see on the trains here is everyone on a cell phone or a tablet as they travel to work.
Right. Ohio did pass that. We opted out, and I don't have Wi-Fi in my house any longer. And I suspect that in several generations, they'll look back at us and how we looked back 100 years ago at, the healthy aspects of tobacco.
Yes, I see that it's like the new tobacco is, and yet there's an infatuation. It's glamorous to have all these devices, just as it once was to smoke and to sort of fondle your cigarette as you talk. It was considered glamorous in 1940, and the movie stars all smoked, and we see it in the old movies, but it wasn't a healthy habit. And finally, decades later, we virtually eradicated smoking. But the problem is we've become so dependent on our wireless devices. Now, there's a lot of ways to deal with this, and one is to minimize your handling of the phone. Put it on the table when you talk. You don't have to hold it, and don't put it on your head. Use those little earbuds or a speakerphone. There's just a lot of things you can do to minimize your exposure, and we should be more conscious about it.
I agree. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Beverly, this is Kathy. I have a question for you. When the blood cells coagulate highlighted like they did. Is that due to electromagnetic force?
Yeah.
Or I know probably the combination, but
Well,
is that the majority?
it's okay. I can post this study. I published it. It isn't that directly related to the course, so I didn't make it a required reading. I'm going to post it under additional papers, that module in the course,
Perfect.
because I did a blood study on was it 10 or 12 people. I found that people 55 and up had this kind of blood reaction, and that was stage 1 of the blood reaction. Stage 2, their cells got spiky, very abnormal looking. So, but when blood sticks together, it's, to tell you more technically what's going on, it's the microwaves and the way it's going on and off abruptly. It's not like a microwave oven. It's not that strong, but it's abrupt turning on and off of microwaves. And if you could have a radio frequency meter, and maybe I'll bring one to my second talk and show you with a cell phone how the meter is registering enormous pulses. That's what's jarring your whole system. And the blood, I believe that calcium channels are opening up on blood cells and letting calcium in. So it's a voltage-gated calcium channel that's being affected that's causing this sticky kind of blood cell. And that's not a good picture. And that's also the same kind of blood difficulties that we see in aging populations. And in the picture of inflammation as well. So it would be very useful to take a look at inflammatory markers, you know, biochemically, if somebody wanted to do research on this, to take a look at fibrinogen, for example, and other chemicals in the blood that get released when there's an inflammatory response. Because I think that there is one in response to our communication devices, sorry to say, especially when held close to the body.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
How come there isn't more publicity around this? I mean, I'll talk to my dad, who's a very Western medicine doctor, and he'll tell me that there's nothing wrong with wireless or microwaves.
Well, you know, that's the official word from the FDA and the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. Let me say this. If you didn't realize it already, Big Pharma controls healthcare, right? A lot. And we don't have a lot of mind-body medicine in our official healthcare system. You would acknowledge that, right? Well, we have the same situation with very large industries that make communications, like, you know who they are. I don't have to mention names. But they make cell phones, they give you service, others that give you service. These are very big industries with big lobbyists in Washington that are virtually writing their own legislation to protect themselves, just like Big Pharma does. And so it's the same game. Corporations are ruling or overruling government. Actually, the government says, what should we do about this? Where are the standards? We don't have standards. We only have guidelines. And the guidelines were set by the industry, and that's a problem. And every time there's individuals, like groups that I'm involved with, advocates that want to explore electrohypersensitivity and what we can do about it, we just don't have that kind of muscle in Washington or in our local congresses, etc. We don't have that kind of muscle that big corporate lobbyists have. And so the government has been kowtowing to big industry and not paying attention to the consumers and their cries. And that's just true across the board in medicine and in the communication industry in terms of our own safety. Any other questions? Are you folks still there? Suddenly.
That was an excellent presentation, Beverly. This is
Suddenly
Kathy
was so
again. Are you gonna post this presentation as well?
Yes, I have recorded it, and I hope it can be heard. There are a lot of background noise, and in the future, I really hope you'll mute yourself. I had to mute some of you, and somebody who came, caller 5, apparently got ticked and disappeared. But I muted them as soon as they came in because they didn't know what they were coming into. So
It's
yes,
really true. But
I will.
will you post this presentation as well?
I'm going to post.
PowerPoint?
Yes, I'll post the slides, and I'm going to post the recording. The recording has to be converted, and it will take a while to get in. It's a big thing,
Okay.
and I think I'll post a link to it. We'll see how I have to do that in this course. They keep changing Canvas. It seems to be different every year in terms of its
Can you
what we can
clarify
do.
the discussion? Oh, can you clarify the discussion post timing?
Yes. Let's see. I think the first one will end. That's 1A and 1B will end on the 16th, probably at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And I'm going to give you 12 days for each week from the starting day of that session. It'll always be 12 days. Then I do final grading and it's closed.
Thank you.
Does that clarify? I think I'm giving you plenty of time, and so if you didn't make it in the week, you have a few more days the next week.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Good. Anybody else?
This is Fabian. I just want to let you know I really enjoyed this presentation.
Thank you.
Makes me excited to be in this class and just to learn more from you and my fellow classmates as well. So thank you.
Okay. Well, don't forget to do the reading. It isn't enough to just post your ideas. And it's also important in subsequent weeks where we're actively reading to give references, a little citation and reference when you're doing your discussions posts, that they're not just opinions, but opinions founded on fact, documented in our literature. And it doesn't have to be our readings per se. If you're reading other things outside, well, then cite that. But please know that Wikipedia is not an official source and can't be cited in this course. That's a publicly written thing, and it's really fraught with a lot of political opinions that I don't agree with, especially with respect to energy medicine. If you look that up on Wiki, you're going to see very bad news about what it's an educational thing. Go take a look at energy medicine or energy therapies on Wikipedia and look at the slander, okay? It isn't what it is. But, whoever is writing this or controlling it is promulgating an agenda, in my opinion. So, anyway, it's not official and it's not based on peer review of the peers in the field, at least. So are we done for today?
Excellent presentation.
Any final
Thank
comments?
you.
Thank you. You're welcome. I know it's been an hour and a half. I kind of planned on that, and maybe other people usually do an hour, but what the heck. So, okay. Well, it's been my pleasure, and wish I could only meet you guys, but we'll have to do it this way. So I'm going to stop our recording and convert this and get some link to it in the course and put up the slides, and also my paper on the cell phone radiation and blood thing. I'll put it under additional papers. It's not required reading, but just for your gratification that you can see how cell phone radiation influenced blood. And I've done several lectures on that topic alone, which you can find on by searching for my name, cell phone radiation. I know Silicon Valley, what is it? If you Google Silicon Valley, my name, and cell phone radiation talk, they have the whole thing up there. It was like a whole hour. We don't have time to go into it in detail, but if you wanted to hear it, it's up there. So there's a lot of lectures I've given which are posted by others online. Okay, well,
Perfect.
again,
Thank you.
it's been a great session with all of you, and I look forward to continuing with you in the course. All the best.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you.